Hey, do you have a good overview of the CSRD process? In this interview, I talked to Agathe from the CSI HUB, who developed a 10-step process that helps companies to become compliant with the CSRD. So if this interests you, definitely check out this episode. Hey, Agathe. And first of all, thank you so much for taking the time. For those of the listeners that are not familiar with your work yet, can you tell us a little bit about yourself and the work that you're doing right now?
Yes, thank you, Daniel. Thank you for having me here. My name is Agathe. I'm located in Germany. I'm an entrepreneur. I work as a consultant and trainer for sustainability issues. And it's everything about the value chain, everything about reporting, everything about sustainability, strategy, and management. But I'm also interested and now deeper in the topic of circular economy and biodiversity. And maybe a little bit to my past. I started in my professional business. I started 10 years ago with the sustainability issues in the international trade. And I was responsible to build up the sustainability department. And it includes sustainability management, so all the structure in the company, also the sustainability strategy. And yes, let's say the CSR at the end to build up the CSR, so the corporate social responsibility department that covers topics like food waste, like social engagement, but also issues in the value chain. So this was a little bit my past about it. Yeah. And
Okay. Yeah, that already sounds super interesting. And I would be curious to know, like, how do you use the knowledge that you gained in the past for your sustainability consultancy right now? And what are the topics that you're focusing on at the moment?
yes, since last year, I was working very intensively with medium-sized and small-sized company. And I was working on the topic of CSRD, supply chain, and also the EU taxonomy. And it was a challenge also that I see in different companies regarding the CSRD. So I developed recently a kind of roadmap or let's say a checklist to support companies how to get at the end to the successful, let's say, report. And yes, I hope this tool can help a lot of companies.
Oh, yeah, that sounds super interesting. So I'm definitely interested to learn more about that. Before we dive into the process that you developed and into the topic in general, can you tell us maybe for those of the listeners that don't know, like the CSRD, like who does this relate to? Who is affected by those regulations? So who is like, who should be very careful and listen to in the following sequences about your tool?
Yes, at the moment, because the CSRD itself is a, let's say, a regulation or legislation that is, let's say, implemented step by step. So at the moment, for the financial year 2025, the bigger companies are now, let's say, in the focus that are already reported in the past, and say conform to the NFRD, so non-financial reporting directive. But as I said, it's a process, it's a step-by-step implementation by the EU, let's say. So process will continue until 2029. And also the smaller companies, the medium size and the small companies will be, let's say, there is also obligation for them until 2029 to implement a report. But at the beginning, maybe it's important, even if you as a small company are not, let's say, have not the obligation right now, if you are in the value chain, it could also happen that a bigger company has a requirement, has a questionnaire to use. So it's good to be prepared already because it's it's a whole value chain that is involved.
Okay, yeah. I already had like a couple of podcast episodes where I was talking to companies that were faced with the CSRD. And I feel like that the overall consensus is that it's quite complicated and the regulation is like still developing and it's like quite a complex topic. So it's definitely not an easy task. So how do you help companies to get an overview with this, and like how do you help companies to like get this structured and maybe a little bit more easier done?
Yes, I would like to explain you the 10 steps a little bit, maybe very short at the beginning. So as I said, the first step is really the question that you asked already. So it's about the legislation effectiveness. So it means at what time I'm really obligated to communicate. Then it's always an educational topic also to have an overview of the CSRD and the ESRS, so the European Sustainability Reporting Standard itself. It's complex itself. And then what is quite interesting, the third step is to have a status quo of the company. So what is already inside the company? The fourth step is to define the responsibilities. And the fifth step is to define also internal and external stakeholders. Then to do the double materiality assessment itself. Then next step is the gap analysis. That's mean what is the gap between what is already current in the company and what is let's say required. The next steps, let's say one step is optional to combine it with a sustainability strategy if there is one, or if you want to develop one. And the last step, so step 9 and 10, is really to create the report itself. And through these steps, let's say we go step by step. It's a kind of project, let's say it like this, and really with different milestones. Yes, and I guide the company and the team through it. So try to, let's say, to give them the overview and to divide the complexity in different steps.
Okay. Yeah, I think that sounds very helpful because like in my experience, companies are really struggling to like know what is the next step, how to approach that. But just from the first glance, like 10 steps is still quite a lot. Do you have like a way how you can like introduce this like easily to companies so that they're not, even with the 10 steps, are being overwhelmed?
Yes, the first 4 steps are a preparation. So what I did is, how is the level of education? So what is the background they know already about the CSRD? Then I'll explain also the ESRS, which is really based on the ESG. So to explain the companies, we need also for the further development people or staff who is caring about all environmental issues. This could be energy, this could be CO2 emissions, this could be energy management systems, this could be circular economy. So everything that is involved in the environmental, yes. Then we go to the social, so everything regarding own workforce, workers in the value chain, consumers, and then also the governance topic, yes. So this is a preparation step to build up a team that supports then at the end the whole the reporting. What is also important to define a responsible is it the CEO, CFO who is responsible, let's say on a management level for this topic. And my recommendation is also to have a cross-functional project leader, yes, because you have to bring the 3 teams, the teams from environmental, the teams from social and governance together. So this is really a preparation issue, and which also contains what is already in the company. When you really do a deep dive, you look at the ESRS, and then you find, okay, maybe we already have something regarding energy. Yes, maybe we have an ISO already somewhere, or we have, let's say, a diversity guideline. So it's really to have a status quo. And this is really the preparation part, to build up a team, to define the responsibles, to look, okay, what is already there? Yes, which activities do we already have? Or maybe also, have we something done in the past, like the DMCA, like the GRI? So what is already there? The second step, as you said, is the assessment itself. So
Okay. One second. Sorry.
publish.
Okay, I still need to see if I can follow you.
Yeah.
So from in total we have like the 10 different steps. You mentioned them in the beginning. And now the first 4 steps are all preparation phase. This means that you know like what legislation is important to you, that you know about the requirements from the CSRD and ESRS, and then like the ESG topics that you mentioned. You mentioned status quo, so that I check like in my company what is important and so on. And the fourth one is like, who is responsible for what? So basically, this is like the initial preparation phase of like how I look in my company and how I prepare myself for everything. From your experience on with your client, like what are companies struggling with? What are like learnings that you had, which is like quite important to know during this preparation phase?
So most of my companies really, it's a topic of to build up the team. Sometimes it's there is no responsible in the companies. There is not already a department of sustainability. In some of my companies, there is like a silo thinking. Sorry, so this means there is no cross-functional thinking, and the department all just report to themselves, but there are not cross-functional meetings, and this is a topic that needs this cross-functionality. And also it's really an issue to really think, okay, what are the requirements? What is really the environmental issues? Who are the responsibles in the companies? Yes. And who are the responsible in the social and in the government? So this is really important to first look at the requirements and then think, okay, it's Mr. XY. So it's this and this responsible in the company. This is most longer process than I expected. Yeah, to define the really the right person. Yeah.
Yeah, I can imagine that this takes up a lot of time. Like a lot of companies that I talk to, they are still trying to make sense of all the regulations, and it's quite complicated because there are some, it's not just the CSRD, there are also other regulations. So it's like to get an overview of all of this and then to internally decide who takes what. I think like that's definitely like a big part of like getting prepared. But let's assume for the moment that companies are able to do that. Like there's a ton of information on the regulations out there online, and then companies get together and they decide like who's responsible for what. What are then the next steps? I think you called it the assessment phase then.
Yeah, and the assessment phase is it's the kind also a little bit about preparation at the beginning, because the requirement of the double maturity assessment is to have the view of internal and external stakeholders. So that means if you define the team already, you can say, okay, I've already done it. I have my internal stakeholder. But the challenge is also to have a perspective, and this is important. You don't have to invite all the NGOs, all the suppliers, yeah, so your external partners, but you have to have a perspective of them, yes. So also to be aware who are my external stakeholders, and yes, like suppliers, customers, business partners, NGOs, and it's also very varied. Let's say some companies are more affected, let's say, by the legislation, others less. So to be aware who are my stakeholders. So this is also a little bit that preparation, and then really to start with the double maturity assessment. So really to go into the impact, to go in the risk and the chances, yes, and to do it as a formulation. So to have a qualitative and a quantitative part of it. And then the gap analysis is another step. It means see really if you have defined your material topics, what are the requirements regarding the data? And the data can be text really, it can be prosa, but it also really the KPIs. Yes. So, and this is also, there is a list by the EFRAG, which is defined and to be aware, okay, maybe which KPIs are already the company, yes, and which KPI are additional and we need them, and do we have the process to get the KPIs or to get the data? This is really what happens in the second assessment period, let's say. Like.
Okay. I'm curious to know, like, how come you have like defining the stakeholder before the DMA? Because I also had a conversation that was looking more at the DMA itself, and there also one step was to define the stakeholders. So how, or like, what are the different stakeholder groups that need to be defined, or is this different from each other, or is this basically the same step just done twice or a little bit separated?
There is a little bit differentiation. So one part of the stakeholders are already in the team. Another part is what is the requirement of the CSRD to have a perspective of the employees, for example, the management, the work council. So these are not part of the team. The owner of companies could be also an internal stakeholder. So the employees themselves are already part of the ESG team, let's say it like this. But there is, for example, also like the management who should be involved and like work council. So you see there are additional stakeholders that are needed for internal. For external, it's another job you have to do. Yeah.
Okay. And then you said then companies basically have to do the double materiality assessment and the gap analysis. For those of the listeners that are not super familiar with the process, can you, without like going too much into detail and explaining the whole thing, I know that would take up too much time, but just like briefly describe what those steps are and why are they so important for the CSRD?
So in the DMA, the first step is really to create a long list. Let's say it like this. This means that you do a benchmark. You do a kind of market research to make it very simple. Yes. So you look at, okay, what are the competitors doing? What have I done as a company in my past? And there is a matching also with the ESRS. Yeah. So at the end, you have a list with your activities, with the activities of the competitors, and you match them with the ESRS. This also includes a lot of work regarding, okay, do I have a code of conduct? What kind of, let's say, guidelines do I have? Yes, this is the first. Then the second step is really to be prepared for this IRA assessment, which is the hard IRA assessment with impact, opportunity, and risk. And this means that this is the heart of the whole DMA to look, I'm as a company, what is really my big impact? And this impact can be positive and this impact can be also negative. So this is the inside out perspective. So first step, I look, okay, I'm as a company have product, have, let's say relationships, have kind of services. And with these services and with the production of this product, have an impact. The second perspective is the outside in. So also which, let's say, influence, what comes from outside and has an impact or let's say a chance and a risk on me as a company. Yeah. And it could be also social issues or let's say society issues, but at the point, of course, environmental issues. Yeah. It could be a law. It could be also AI. It could be new generation. It could be different impacts that can come from outside and has an impact also on me. And maybe to continue on this, the double materiality assessment is on a qualitative basis, so to define this impacts and these opportunities and risks, and also on the quantitative basis. So if I have a definition of this impact and risk and opportunities, I have to really to quantify them. Yes, and is it a small impact or is it a big impact?
Okay.
Yeah, for example, only. And the second step that you add is the gap analysis. The gap analysis, for those who don't know them, it's about to look, okay, what are the requirements? If a topic is material, yeah, so if a topic is important for me, and what do I have already in the company? Yes, and this could be data. These are also targets or metrics, and to have a gap. Where do I have a gap? Let's say it's like it sounds a name, yeah, but it's also a complicated process. Yeah.
Yeah. Maybe just two more sentences, because earlier you also mentioned that in this phase you have the option to include strategy. What exactly did you mean by that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the part, like from my experience, when I consult, let's say medium-sized companies, they don't have let's say a big sustainable strategy, or they don't have any issues about it. So they start now because the obligation, they start now with the CSRD. And I see the CSRD as a chance, really, because you create this material topics. Yes, you create the target. You deal with the KPIs. So to use really this material topics as a kind of strategy also, yeah, and to really also decide, okay, these are then my orientation for my team, yes, for the whole company, and to set really the right budgets and the measures also on this. And it's an optional way, but if you do this all work, you can use it really as yeah, let's say as a step to 2030 as a strategy, yes, because most of the, let's say, material topics and the targets behind are not something that you can do ad hoc. They are really long-lasting topics. So yeah, I think there is a chance to use it
Yeah.
to develop a strategy if you don't have one. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, that sounds very useful. And then basically afterwards comes the last of the three parts and step 9 and 10, right?
Yes. To explain this very short, because I often ask, okay, how do I develop the structure and the prosa, the text of the CSRD report? There are some guidance by the EFRAG, by the ESRS, yes, like for example, the overhead ESRS 1 and 2. They said you have to write something about the strategy. You have to write something about how you do the double maturity assessment. Yes, so there are a lot of let's say hints or like recommendations how to write the report. But of course, the ESRS are also, of course, gives a structure to write it. And yes, of course, it depends a little bit how many topics are material then and how long will be the report. Another important step is also to be aware who I want to address with the CSRD. Because with the CSRD, you want to address maybe different stakeholders than, for example, your customers as stakeholders. Yes, because the CSRD is a kind of bigger report, yes, and it has a lot of data. So to be aware, okay, maybe I want to address my banks, yes. So the stakeholders to address the CSRD are different, maybe than to make a, like, say, marketing brochure or something. So to be also aware about this and how to structure this and how many texts do you want to write.
Yeah. Yeah, I get that. I get that the CSRD is definitely a different type of content and a different focus rather than you would do that for your consumers. I think in general that the 10 steps they are super helpful because as I said, I talk to a lot of companies and they are searching for some structure to like get to the CSRD. So I think that would definitely be very helpful. Do you have them written down somewhere on a template? Because I feel like this could be also very helpful to a lot of the listeners right now.
Yeah, I have them. We create a template for them. Yeah, of course.
Perfect. Could you send me the link to that afterwards? And I can link it directly in the show notes and people that are listening can just like already access it. And then I think it's maybe a little bit easier to see all the 10 steps written out and not just like from listening. I think that's definitely useful. Okay, I have one last question. If someone is listening to the podcast episode and they're like, what should they take away from this conversation that they could bring with them to another meeting, maybe next week, where they discuss about the CSRD? So what is the one thing that you want them to take away from this conversation?
I think to be aware that the CSRD is a complex process and it's not easy. But on the other hand, yes, to try with the 10 steps, I try to give a really a guiding to really set the complexity and divide it in different steps to make it easier. And also really my recommendation is to see it as a chance and to use it really for cross-functional teams, yes, to work together. Also to make a kick-off, yes, to really to bring the teams together. And the second is really, if it's possible, to really create a sustainability strategy and use the target, use the data, also, for board, for the management, for the different departments as a chance.
Yeah, I think that's a good recommendation. I really feel that this can be very helpful. Okay, thank you so much for taking the time. I hope that we can talk very soon.
Thank you, Daniel.
Hey, if you come this far, thank you very much for listening to the AtlasZero podcast. If you are interested in this topic, we just launched the AtlasZero Navigator, which is basically a product compiled of all the interviews we ever done, all the materials we either created or collected, comprised into one product. It basically helps you to understand all the sustainability reporting requirements of the EU, and we really think it's super helpful. So if you're interested, definitely check out the link below and check out our product. And also, and I have to ask this, please like and subscribe to our channel. Like, it helps us a ton to reach more people. And at the end, our goal is to help as many companies as possible. So you can help us a little bit in achieving that. Thank you very much. And I hope I see you very soon.